Okay. Bhante, since in any given moment there are apparently countless movements of flux in the body, when doing the Iriyapatha practice, how should we attempt to note the intention before each body movement? Some suggest that this noting of intention prior to moving the body is essential. How should we understand this in light of the uncountable moments of flux?
Well, you can have intention only when you do something intentionally. This body inner movement, palpitation, and other many movements take place by themselves automatically. When you breathe in, you feel the breath. You don't intend to have feeling. You have intention to breathe. When feeling arises, you become aware of it and move on. It happens so quickly, you have no time to stop and then intend. This is exactly what the Buddha says. Be mindful as it is happening. The mindfulness flows with all these movements. Many thousands of movements take place. You cannot be mindful of all of them, because when you are mindful of one, thousands of others appear and disappear. And therefore you become mindful of general rising and falling of so many things. But don't try to pick one of them. You just feel these movements, flux, change. You just feel it and let it happen. That would give you a very good chance to understand how quickly things change. And this is why the Buddha in the Anapanasati Sutta, the last section, he said, Aniccanupassana, Viraganupassana, Nirodhanupassana, Patitagganupassana. He did not say become mindful of impermanence of this, impermanence of that. He simply said, be mindful of impermanence. Because without specifying or picking up one of them, he generally mentioned, be mindful of impermanence. Since there are so many things are happening, you just can be mindful of these changes taking place. You cannot intend. Only when you move deliberately, intentionally, then the movement becomes slow and you can notice intention moving and so on. But otherwise you cannot have intention of all these almost automatic happening in the body and mind. Any other question?
Bhante, would you please explain the difference between fetters and hindrances?
Oh yes, I thought somebody would ask me this question yesterday. Yes, fetters are, I have drawn a chart when I was teaching using PowerPoint presentation. If you imagine the floor, the ground, on the ground you will see little plants here and there. Some plants, the larger part is underground, like some cactus in Arizona and so on. And then there is a big, large network of roots underground. Fetters are like these large roots underground, from which hindrances arise. You can cut the plant and smooth the land, but the hindrance will arise again. My very favorite simile was a bamboo tree, bamboo plant somebody planted behind my window. And I said, don't plant bamboo behind my window. It will block my view. He did not believe, he simply planted. Believe me, about a year later, my view through the window was completely blocked. Then I asked him to remove. He did everything to remove it, even he bulldozed it. He did, after bulldozing, 6 months later, another shoot came up. And then again, he was so guilty, he dug it and removed most of the roots. Another 6 months later, you find more shoots. Then one young lady was here. One morning, she started digging every inch of that area and found about 10 feet long, uh, about 3 inches diameter root until she removed that bamboo shoots came out. Like that, roots, so long as the roots are there, hindrances are. Roots are fetters. Roots are fetters. Hindrances are uh, uh, what you call nivarnas. Fetters are called sangyojana. Sangyojana, word sangyojana also is very interesting. Sangyojana means joining together, like this network of roots underground. Hindrances are not called uh, sangyojana, they hinder our progress temporarily. And therefore, the difference between hindrances and sangyojana are more deeply rooted. Hindrances are temporary. By attaining jhanas, you temporarily cut them off, subside, and so on. And this is the difference between hindrances and fetters.
Thank you, Bhante. This is a question that you answer every day during the meditation, but as you said, there can't be too many reminders. When we focus on the breath, should we acknowledge the pauses between the in-breath and out-breath?
You will notice it and don't stop to acknowledge it. You move on, noticing that inhaling and exhaling, you continue. Notice that there is a brief pause. I don't think you should stop there to notice it or to widen the gap and so forth. These are unnatural. We simply want to pay attention to the breath. That is why Buddha said, Yatha Bhuta Jnana Darsana. Seeing and having knowledge of what is there. Yatha Bhuta. Yatha Bhuta means what is there. Jnana means wisdom, darsana means vision. So we say seeing and knowing what is there. And therefore, you don't have to stop to focus on one thing as it flows. As it flows, that is also, I mentioned once before, or several times before, that's called anupassana. Anupassana means seeing as it is happening. This is a very fine, refined, subtle awareness that we can develop as we pay attention. I call it mindful attention. Or yoniso manasikara in Pali. Okay.
Shall we save the remaining questions for after meditation?
Right. Any questions you can ask me after meditation. Now let us begin our metta practice. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds, whatever living beings there may be, without exception,
weak or strong, long,
large,
large,
medium,
medium,
short,
short,
subtle
subtle
or
or
gross,
gross,
visible
visible
or
or invisible,
invisible, living
living
near
near
or
or
far,
far,
born
born
or
or
coming
coming
to
to
birth.
birth.
May
May
all
all
beings
beings
have
have
happy
happy
minds.
minds.
Let
Let
no
no
one
one
deceive
deceive
another,
another,
nor
nor
despise
despise
anyone
anyone
anywhere.
anywhere.
Neither
Neither
from
from
anger
anger
nor
nor
ill
ill
will
will
should
should
anyone
anyone
wish
wish
harm
harm
to
to
another.
another.
As
As
a
a
mother
mother
would
would
risk
risk
her
her
own
own
life
life
to
to
protect
protect
her
her
only
only
child,
child,
even
even
so
so
towards
towards
all
all
living
living
beings,
beings,
one
one
should
should
cultivate
cultivate
a
a
boundless
boundless
heart.
heart.
One
One should
should cultivate
cultivate
for
for
all
all the
the
world
world a
a
heart of boundless
boundless loving
friendliness,
friendliness,
above,
above,
below,
below,
and
and
all
all
around,
around,
unobstructed,
unobstructed,
without
without
hate or
hatred or
resentment,
resentment,
whether
whether
standing,
standing,
walking,
walking,
sitting,
sitting,
lying
lying
down,
down,
or
or
whenever
whenever
awake.
awake.
One
One
should
should
develop
develop
this
this
mindfulness.
mindfulness.
This
This
is
is
called
called
divinely
divinely
dwelling
dwelling
here,
here,
not
not
falling
falling
into
into
erroneous
erroneous
views,
views,
but
but
virtuous
virtuous
and
and
endowed
endowed with
with
vision,
vision, removing
removing
desires
desire for
for
sensual
sensual pleasures.
pleasures.
One
One
comes
comes
never
never
again
again
to
to
birth
birth
in
in
the
the
womb.
womb.
Once again, friends, this is a very deep, sincere, earnest wish that all beings, especially beings who are suffering from this COVID-19 all over the world, I wish we all do this practice every day so that our heart and mind goes out to these individuals to be free from their pain, suffering, and returning to normal, regular life. With this background in our mind, we pay attention to our breathing, noticing inhaling as inhaling, exhaling as exhaling, and noticing the brief pause between inhaling and exhaling without verbalizing, conceptualizing, we are trying to control the breath. Let the breath flow in and out. As it flows in and out, we just become aware of it. This is what I mentioned earlier, called seeing things as they really are, or seeing things as they really happening. Always we see this. And then when we stay in that way, noticing this happening, our breath becomes calm, relaxed, and peaceful. The body becomes calm, relaxed, and peaceful. Mind becomes calm, relaxed, and peaceful. And then our we become aware of the feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. They all are working together, changing together, appearing and disappearing together. We may not be able to isolate them, but they all flow together. And then our hindrances, greed, resentment, restlessness and worry, sleepiness and drowsiness, and doubt slowly subside, and then we gain concentration. All these are very powerful activities. They all subside and then gain concentration. When we gain concentration, we not only feel calm, relaxed, peaceful, but also we can see the changes in the deepest way where no word can have there is no room in the mind for words to enter, because our awareness is full of rising and falling of countless things, as I mentioned in answering the questions earlier. So we stay with that and continue your practice without trying to think of the past, think of what we are going to do afterward, but just be aware of what is happening right now. Dukkha pattaja nidukkha, bhaya pattaja nibhaya, soka pattaja nisokha, hontu sabbe pipanino. May the suffering be free from suffering. May the fear-struck be free from fear. May the grieving be free from grief. So too may all living beings. Friends, without any reservation, any second thought, wholeheartedly, we must wish that all beings be happy, secure, free from pain and suffering. Especially this time, so many people are suffering from this COVID-19, and we want them to be free from that suffering and return to their regular, ordinary daily activities in good health. And all those who are supporting them in various duties, medical professionals, they are helpers, nurses, hospitals, all the facilitators, social workers, government, security officers, and so on and so forth. So many millions of wonderful people are involved in helping those suffering beings, and some are still working very hard to discover, invent some kind of vaccine to reduce this or to eliminate this from the earth. We want to wish all of them to be healthy, peaceful, and continue their noble work and free from suffering. With this, we end this morning meditation. Now open the floor to people ask me questions. I want to start a question, answering a question which is not posted in online now, or nobody directly asked me. That question, it is a very, very important question, but our entire time we can spend trying to answer that Last year I started a class to teach that. Unfortunately, we could not go too far. The question is, or the request is, to explain dependent origination. Dependent origination is not that quickly explained. Nobody can explain very quickly. By reciting the 12 steps of dependent origination, we won't gain any insight into dependent origination. They are given in Udana. First three discourses are on the same thing. If I were to say in English, the 12 steps, number one is ignorance. Number two, volitional formations. Sankhara, yes, volitional formation. Where from volitional formation, dependent on volitional formations, consciousness. From dependent on consciousness, mentality and materiality arises. Dependent on mentality, materiality, sixfold basis. Dependent on sixfold basis, contact. Dependent on contact, feeling. Dependent on feeling, craving. Dependent on craving, clinging. Dependent on clinging, becoming. Dependent on becoming, aging. And dependent on aging, death, dependent on clinging, birth. Dependent on birth, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. These are the 12 steps. Now, number one is ignorance. I must tell you how deep ignorance is. If I tell you right now, you all are ignorant, you get angry with me. You can say, how can I be ignorant? I am educated, I have university degrees, I am lawyer, doctor, engineer, and this and that. I have so many titles, I have so many years of experience in practicing, teaching, and so researching and so forth. How can you accuse me of being ignorant? When you come up with this kind of reasoning for your not having ignorance, itself is your ignorance. If you are not ignorant, you would not come out with all these things. What is your ignorance? Ignorance is not seeing the Four Noble Truth. Not seeing the Four Noble Truth is ignorance. How many of you know the Four Noble Truth? You may know the words. You even may explain. You can write books on Four Noble Truths. But still you don't know Four Noble Truths. Why is that? Because you do not practice, you do not understand the practice of meditation. You don't practice meditation properly, correctly. If you practice meditation correctly, you definitely understand suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering perfectly well, and you will not have any suffering. You would have attained full enlightenment. Until such time, everybody has ignorance. Now you can see how deep ignorance is. If I tell you, you are attached to your so-and-so, I say, you have ignorance. When I say you are attached to so-and-so, and I say, because of your attachment to so-and-so, you are ignorant. You may get upset, offended. How can I not be attached to my son? my daughter, my husband, my wife, my parents. That is life. I have to. This kind of reasoning you come up with because of your ignorance. So, with this, I stop for you to ask me further question on this topic. So, this entire discussion after meditation, every day, I can spend time explaining dependent origination if you all agree. If not, I ask other questions. Anybody has any question?
You only, just to clarify, Bhante, you only want questions on dependent origination now, or you want the questions already asked, or any questions?
Yeah, if you have any other question, because everybody may not be interested in dependent origination. That is why I am reluctant to dwell on this question. I want to open the discussion for anybody to ask any question. But since this request came, I simply mentioned this. I'm sure that a couple, I don't want to mention their names, I know them personally. They are in California now. They used to stay in Washington area. And they are very interested in this topic, but everybody may not be interested in this. They may have other practical questions and they can ask me. I will be happy to answer their questions.
Okay, Bhante, the first question that I have here is the day before yesterday, you mentioned that it was enough to develop mindfulness and clear comprehension in just one foundation of mindfulness, one out of the four. This person is concerned that if, for example, you only developed this clear comprehension from mindfulness of the body, the first foundation of mindfulness, and you saw in that used that the body to see that there's no self. This person is concerned that you wouldn't be able to see anatta or no self in the other three foundations. So this person is wondering how it can be complete with just one of the foundations practiced.
Good question. You say body. Body. I said if you take the body, mindfulness of the body is divided into 6 categories. Number 1 is inhaling and exhaling, anapanasati. Anapanasati or inhaling and mindfulness of breathing itself is a big subject. Therefore, Buddha has given another discourse on the mindfulness of breathing. So he took it out from the 4 foundations of mindfulness and mentioned in that mindfulness of breathing discourse that all the 4 foundations are there. Number 1, now mindfulness of breathing, Anapanasati Sutta, also divided into 4 groups. First group is mindfulness of the body. And then in Anguttara Nikaya, there is a discourse, several discourses on mindfulness of death, Marana Sati. So Buddha asked venerable monks, his disciples, whether they practice Maranasati. One said, if I live long enough for one day, I can practice it, attain liberation. And second said, if I live half a day, and that is enough. Third said, if I live long enough to go and collect my food and eat, that time is enough. Fourth said, if I collect my food and sit down and eat, that time is enough. Fifth said, if I swallow one morsel of food, live that long, that is enough to attain full liberation. The sixth one said, Venerable Sir, if I live long enough to practice mindfulness of breathing and inhale once, exhale once, that time is enough for me to attain full enlightenment. That is how I see Maranasati, mindfulness of death. What does it mean? The person who focus entire mind on impermanence of one inhaling and one in exhaling, because in one inhaling there are many minor moments, the particle of air that you breathe in, and these particles change and disappear, and the person will see this change very clearly, so he can gain understanding of impermanence. And then when he exhale, the same thing happens. That is why Venerable Kondanya, by listening to the first sermon, Buddha even did not mention anicca, dukkha, anicca especially. The word anicca he did not use. But Kondanya listened to it so attentively, wholeheartedly, that he saw in that discourse Buddha uh, explaining impermanence in another words. That is samudaya dhammanupassi, why dhammanupassi, or dukkha samudaya, dukkha nirodha. Dukkha samudaya, dukkha nirodha. In another discourse, several discourses, Buddha said, because I teach only two things, dukkha and dukkha nirodha. Pubbeceva bhikkhave etarahicha dukkhancha panyapemi, dukkha nirodhancha panyapemi. Because I teach only arising of dukkha and passing away dukkha, disappearing dukkha. Now, with these two words tells us a whole lot that things are so quickly changing. If one gains this awareness, this understanding, that person can attain all the stages of enlightenment, streaming, and so on by overcoming all the fetters. And therefore, these are not my own fabrication, my own creation. I dwell all my information, I depend all my information on the teaching from text. And therefore, I can tell you several things from my own personal experience, because I've been meditating for over 70 years and gone through so many things in meditation. And therefore, with confidence, I can tell you what the Buddha said. Every moment I think of what the Buddha said, I will be thrilled to see his depth and profundity of his wisdom. And friends, don't have any doubt about this. You simply read, if you like, you read the Mahasatipatthana, Anapanasati and so forth, very clearly without any doubt. You will see this truth there and see some texts like Anguttara Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya and so forth. You can see how clear this message is. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. When I was asking that question, simultaneously about 20 or 30 people were stating in the chat box that they agree, and that they would be very happy for you to teach them about dependent origination. And many of them admitted to being ignorant.
I think that's a very good sign. Very good sign. I will be happy. Within a very short time, I try to explain dependent origination. I don't know where to end it, where to begin, because it is such a vast subject. You read Visuddhimagga, you get totally confused. Therefore, remember, after reading Visuddhimagga, don't ask me any question from Visuddhimagga. I have read Visuddhimagga when I was learning in monasteries and monks' missionary school. I learned Visuddhimagga, and after that also I read both in Pali and English and Sinhalese. More you read dependent origination in Visuddhimagga, more I get confused. And therefore, I would not depend on that. I would tell you from my experience and how I see dependent origination in my own life. So don't get me wrong, I'm not enlightened. I don't claim to have been to be an enlightened person. But I know these things much better now than before. That much I can tell you. Okay?
So should we pick back up on that this evening?
Right, right. One thing, in the evening, my energy is very low. You know, until this session a few weeks ago, I never participated in evening activities because after my age, after my heart bypass and age and all these things, I became weak. And therefore, evening activities I don't participate in. However, I got some extra energy this time when this COVID-19 happened and so many people suffer. I thought I must do something to contribute my little knowledge before my death. With this intention I came up, and don't expect me to be the best in my performance in the evening. However, I try as much as I can, both morning and evening. Don't get discouraged and don't be so, what do you call, empathy towards me. I am okay. Therefore, I will do this in the evening as well. Thank you. Once again, I want to wind down this session saying, may all beings be really well, happy and peaceful. We are all one unit, one body, one mind. Think the same way for the whole world. With this, I